So we've hit the last two questions of our review. In order to do these last two, it's going to be helpful if you have the other side of the unit circle stuff filled in or pulled up or whatever. I recommend having it filled in because you get your notes for your test, so making sure you have that would be super helpful. We're going to evaluate some inverses. So if you've got yours pulled up, I'm going to jump to my review so that I can kind of write on there and whatnot, because that will just make things easier for us. So it says evaluate the inverses, and this inverse stuff actually comes from two places. It comes from 4.7 and it comes from the unit circle, right? Because we took notes on inverses, but really all the information comes off of the unit circle. So sine inverse of root 3 over 2. So I go to the sine column, I find root 3 over 2. I get 60, oops, do it in black. I get 60 degrees, or I get pi over 3. Right, it asks for our answer in radians, and it asks for it in degrees. Sine inverse 1/2, I'm in the sine column, I find 1/2. I get 30 degrees, I get pi over 6. Tangent inverse of 0, I get 0 degrees, or I just get 0 radians, 0 pi, whatever you want to say. And I'm just looking for, okay, in the sine column, where's root 3 over 2? What's the angle that matches for it? Remember, I'm limited, right? For sine, my choices go from negative 90 to 90, right? That was our interval. For cosine, my choices go from 0 to 180. And for tangent, my choices go from negative 90 to 90, but of course, we don't include 90. Because 90 doesn't have an inverse. I'm not going to write the because. We just don't include 90. We can't do an inverse for 90 because 90 is undefined. So anyway, continuing on our conversation about these, we are looking at cosine of 1. So I find 1 in my cosine column, and that is also just like tangent 0. Cosine 1 is either 0 degrees or just 0. Cosine inverse of 1/2. So I go to my cosine column, I find 1/2, and that is 60 degrees or pi over 3. Tangent inverse of 1 is 45 degrees or pi over 4. Tangent inverse of negative 1 is either negative 45 degrees, don't write 315, right, because 315 is not in our range of answers. And then we would also say negative pi over 4, not 7 pi over 4. Cosine negative 3 root 3 over 2, that is 150 or 5 pi over 6. And then sine negative root 2 over 2 is either negative 45 or negative pi over 4. Okay, in this last one, these compositions, this is again 4.7 in the unit circle. Remember, we always work inside out. So as we're looking at these, I'm going to do this part first. So sine inverse of 1/2. So I'm looking at my table. I find 1/2 in the sine column. We just did it up above. And I get cosine of 30. Then I go, okay, cosine 30. That's root 3 over 2. And the next one, tangent of 1. Excuse me, tangent inverse of 1. That's 45 degrees. I like using radians if I can. Excuse me, that's not true. I like using degrees when I can, but if the question is written somewhere in radians, then I want to make sure I'm also using radians. I'm going to just change this to be orange so it kind of matches. So I'm doing now sine 45. Sine 45 is root 2 over 2. Cosine pi over 4. So here's a case that's starting in radians, so my answer should be radians. Cosine of pi over 4 is root 2 over 2. Sine inverse for that particular ratio is pi over 4. Cosine 7 pi over 4. 7 pi over 4 is root 2 over 2. And then cosine inverse of root 2 over 2, we find root 2 over 2 in our cosine column in the places that we can choose for inverses, and it's pi over 4. 2 more left. E's got a couple steps, and I love it. So we've got cosine 2 times sine inverse 1/2. So 1/2 for sine is 30 degrees. Again, I like using degrees when I can. Cosine now of 60, because I'm going to double it with that 2. Find 60 degrees, and it takes me back to 1/2. The very last one, tangent inverse negative 1, excuse me, is according to our backside of our unit circle in that table, we would get negative 45 degrees. Sine inverse, sine of negative 45 degrees is negative 2 over 2. And that's how we're attacking those. So it's not anything much more crazy. It's just got multiple steps to it. So that is the review. Hopefully these have helped.